Hey there guys, and welcome back to Mana Down Under. Today we are covering Atraxa, Praetors Voice. Now, she came out from the Breed Lethality deck from Commander 2016, I believe. And boy, she's good. She's currently the most popular Commander deck ever, period. If you go to EDH Rec, she's number one each week, each month, each year. She's the best. So this is just a deck idea, not a hardcore deck list, but it's pretty close. And this is the Atraxa 1/1 counter deck. There's two main Atraxa decks out there. There's a Planeswalker variant and the 1/1 counters mana. That's this one. I will do the other deck in another video. So Atraxa, what is she? She's 4 mana. She's every color but red. Who needs red anyway? She's 4/4, Angel Horror, Flying, Vigilant, Death Touch, and Lifelink. So her combat stats are pretty pushed. At the beginning of your end step, Proliferate. Now that's the whole deck. We care about counters, any form of counters, mainly 1/1. We're going to win on the ground with great card advantage on our creatures. And that's how the deck does it. Our creatures are cheap, and they all have mechanics based around counters, and we make them so strong so easily. We're just out-advantaging our opponent. So we'll go into the deck, we're going to look at the abusers first, then artifacts, and the creatures. The creature bit is really chunky in this deck, because that's the main part of it. And then we'll look at some support and some lands. So first up, your abusers. Doubling Season is the best card in the deck, period. If any token will enter the battlefield, double it up. If any counters will be put on any of your permanents, double it up. And the fact that it's permanents, not just creatures. Doubling Season did get a reprint in Battleborn, which helps us out. Primal Vigor, they call it the poor man's Doubling Season, but it's still 20 bucks. And it only cares about 1/1 counters, and it will have the same effect, but for everyone. So be careful if you want to run it. Hardened Scales is a mini Doubling Season in this deck, in the sense that Proliferate is a 1/1 counter instance. It's not a doubling, it's just adding an additional. Hardened Scales doubles that. So when we're referring to just a singular 1/1 counter gain, Doubling Season, Hardened Scales is a Doubling Season. Pierre the Rascal, he's a good addition from Battleborn. He cares about any permanent, any counter on a permanent, but only one at a time. So it's like if Doubling Season and Hardened Scales had a baby. The Winding Constrictor, similar, cares about counters that will be placed on artifact or creatures, and same as Hardened Scales. Corpse Jack's Menace can just double any counter spell on a creature, which is very strong in the deck. Vorla Hudclade can double any counters on an artifact, creature, or land. It doesn't care which kind, which is great. Deep Glow Skate can just enter the battlefield and double the number of counters on each kind of target permanent we have. That's fine, it's great. Now the artifacts. I want to get them out of the way early because we abuse them like hell for ramping. So the Crawler here, it has Converge. So different colors you can spend on it enter that many counters. It can also self-sustain by putting its own counters on it. And if we're proliferating Hardened Scales or any other abusers out there, this thing can have a lot of counters on it. And the main advantage with it, you can rip any number of counters off it in a turn. You're not limited to tapping for 1 mana. If you need 10 mana, rip 10 counters off it. The Cornucopia, we just choose one and we'll build this up really big across the game. It's quite easy to get this thing up to a 10 counter tapping ability. Pented Prism is like the poor man's ingot in this deck, because you can remove any number of charge counters to add that much mana. We just need at least one on there, and then we can keep proliferating and adding more and more. You can really store it up and have a big bank there. Coalition Relic normally puts out 2 mana a turn. With this deck, you can get 3 or more off it, so it's even better. Everflowing Chalice is wonderful. At least you have 1 counter on it. You can keep stacking it up. It really helps take care of your command attacks. The Pyramid of the Pantheon, similar as a Gilded Lotus, except you pay the 1 for the cast, 2 to get your first brick counter on there, then just proliferate them on. And essentially, it's like a 3 mana Gilded Lotus, as long as you're willing to invest into it. You got your booties here, because Atraxa is a big target. Everyone that plays Commander knows about her. She will be murdered real quick. Contagion Clasp and Engine are great ways to take care of some creatures on entry, and they have Proliferate as a mechanic built in. But the Engine has double Proliferate for 4 mana, which is crazy strong. Lux Cannon, one of my favorites. I love the fact that you can say fire the cannon in game. It's wonderful. In this deck, the amount of proliferating encounters you can move around, you'll get to fire your cannon every turn, which is hardcore removal for any permanents. Helm the Host, like I said, it's going to be every Commander video from now on pretty much. Breaks Atraxa. You put it on her, and you're making copies of her that are not legendary, and you're getting more proliferate at each end step. And plus the combat stats on her are silly. It's a bit too much for the deck. Now the creatures. So I kind of try and Group the creatures up to similar kind of what they'll be doing. So first up, the Rampers. Fertilid, little elemental that enter 2/1/1 counters on him. He has the ability to pay to rip a counter off him, search your library for basic land, put it into play. Now, Atraxa can keep him nice and fed up with counters, and you can just keep ripping counters off him till you have every basic land out of your deck. Gaia Sage is my favourite, and I've found there's a few ways to break her in this deck, there really is. She just cares about how many counters are on her, and she'll tap for that much green mana. We will abuse that heavy later on. Rishgar, it's a good way to get counters on your creatures and add a bit more ramping. Birds of Paradise is a must. You're a 4-drop with 4 different mana in your commander. You need to be on point with your mana. The Khan's Outlast cycle, they're pretty good because they say each creature that has a counter on it gains this effect. So the main 4 are the Abzan ones because they're always Abzan. So you've got First Strike, Flying, Trample, and Death Touch. Lifelink's another one, but the deck can have life other ways. They all have Outlast on themselves, so they can self-sustain, put more counters on themselves, so they're not too bad. They're pretty good budget options. The brothers, the Walking Blister and Hangerback, are just silly in the deck. Walking Blister will keep weenies down all day long, we keep him nice and big and fed up. And Hangerback, we can really build it up and pop it off and have a huge army. Mikaeus, both are interesting in the deck. The white Mikaeus is probably the better option because he can just blanket your whole team with counters, or he can buff himself. The Unhollowed is great in the sense if you don't have counters already on your creatures, because it gives them Undying, they die, they come back, Undying puts a counter on them, then they gain 2. So Mikaeus Unhollowed is a bit harder to work in. Now here's another big green chunk. So these are your big green beaters. Mycoloth does wonders if you can devour. As long as you devour one thing, you can keep adding more and more counters, and at the beginning of each upkeep, or your upkeeps I should say, Mycoloth will put number of saplings equal number of counters on him. Now this will be abused later on in the deck, so he's a good investment. He will put out his own army. Avenger of Zendikar has a fixed number of tokens he'll put out, but the landfall mechanic will put counters on all those plant tokens you produce. So we can really get some big plants out there. These 2 Hydras. Primordial Hydra, left unchecked, can win a game in 2 to 3 turns pretty easy, because he doubles his counters each upkeep, and if he has 10 or more, he has Trample. Now you can put counters onto him, you can proliferate, speed him up, then he doubles his own. It can be a one-shot pretty easy. But be careful, I have died before, making like a 120 Hydra before, and then someone stole it and killed me with my own creature. So just be careful with that one. Colonial Hydra, he is a doubling season on attack essentially, doubles the counters on all your creatures. Bit of a blue section here. Sage of Hours. Now, if you can get 5/1/1 counters on him and pull him off, have an extra turn. We've got lots of ways to abuse it. The hard part is if you're trying to trigger Heroic, but there's other ways to get counters on there, which is easier. Simic Manipulator is great fun. Has evolved, so it can get its own counters going. We can dump a lot of counters on there with Atraxa and other means, and then we can just start stealing things. If you can steal their commander, feels great. Chasm Skulker, the big standard bomb from 2015. If left unchecked with the amount of draw any commander deck can do, especially if you've got a little bit of blue in there, it gets big. And because we're doubling a lot of counters and proliferating, when it does die, you're going to have an army of squid. Wild Drake's here over Thrumming Bird because you can constantly proliferate with him. It's not on attack. You can just pay 4 mana. Plus he's got a bigger butt. He's a 1/4, so he's a good blocker. It has Infect. Infect is another way to win in this deck. If we've only got 2 cards with Infect, because I don't like it in Commander, but it's another way. Here's a bit of a mixed bag now. Archangel Athun, a bit of lifelink, but whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on each creature. So just buffing the board. The Gear Hulk, just dumping 4 counters on any creature or spread amongst all your creatures is very handy in this deck. The Ivory Tusk Fortress is the next best thing to the Prophet that got banned. That Prophet would have made this deck a bit too much, so good thing it's banned, but this helps even more. Altered Ego is just a better clone, can't be countered, and it enters with additional counters on it. Probably X has to be 1 in this deck, or if you got mana more, but then we can at least proliferate on it. The Law Scale, if left unchecked, this little drop gets so fat. We've got the Frogling, just a good way to give our creatures Shroud the Effort counter on them, just good protection. Enduring Scale Lord is just a big flying beater. It's quite easy for him to get 20/20 in this deck very easy. The Scale Guard is pretty good control. Whenever a creature you control with counter attacks, tap a creature the defending player controls. On attack, you can lock down most boards pretty easy. Now, this is like the Lieutenant section. These are all other commanders in the deck that we use pretty reg. Muldrotha is just silly in the deck, as usual, as you would guess. Just gives you too much value in your graveyard. And Offensa, putting out counters and hating on the graveyard, great. Garve, if you have Doubling Season, it's just a bit too much. You're getting so many counters on them, you're creating so many tokens, you're just playing around there. The Blight Dragon, I'm not proud to have it here, but it is another way to end a game really quickly, and you do have a lot of tutors in this deck. You can hit someone for insta-kill on it. Well, close to insta-kill. Get one hit, proliferate across 1 or 2 turns, and you're going to win the game. Just another means if we need it. Rayhan, if we've got all these creatures with counters on them that are dying, we're not losing the counters, or at least putting them back on the board. Dagatar the Adamant, my favourite thing to do with him is actually steal counters from our opponent, because our opponent will have counters in Commander, they always do. If we can steal them, put them outside of the board, even better. Prime Speaker Zagana is a huge draw in this deck. The Fathom Mage, same idea, that's why they're together. Whenever counters put in the Fathom Mage, you can draw a card. Very consistent draw. At least with Atraxa, you at least draw 1 card at each end step, at least. Charlie from Dominaria is great here. She gives our Planeswalkers and other creatures, and us, hexproof. And she can also put a 1/1 counter on each creature. She fits in very well. The Biomancer can just give your creatures a lot of counters on entry. The Herald of the Secret Streams, people underlook it from Ixalan. Pretty much makes our whole deck unblockable. Toothy, because I had Pierre here, of course he's going to be here. And especially with all the drawing, gets really big, more counters on him. And when he does die, we get to draw more cards. Can't complain. Now, we are Atraxa. We got to follow the law. You got to have all the Praetors here. And the Praetors don't, like, synergize with the deck in any way, really. But they're just so good. You got to have them. Now, here's the big support bit. Any card with Proliferate is going to help this deck out. So Fuel for the Cause is a 4-mana counter spell, and you'll notice with all the Proliferate mechanic, it's like an additional 1-2 mana on the card for a normal version, but we do get the Proliferate mechanic. So Steady Progress, Fuel, they're great, just counter and draw, but we get a Proliferate. Tezzeret's Gambit, you're probably going to pay your Phyrexian Life. Free generic mana to draw 2 cards and Proliferate is great. The Tide, whenever we cast any spell, Proliferate. Again, we're just really keeping that board built up. Spread the Sickness is a 5-mana murder, but it does have Proliferate. If you hit their commander with it, your value's there. Plaguemore Beast, I like it actually, because if you're using your Simic Manipulator to steal creatures from your opponent, then sacrifice them for your own cause. Cathar's Crusade gets out of hand very quickly. Every time a creature in this battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. If you can drop a Mycoloth or Avenger of Zendikar, you're probably going to win the game. Just those 2 in with Cathar's Crusade is more than enough to close out a game. Citadel Siege is more of a play and forget it, just name cards. Each combat, you put 2 counters on 1 target creature. Just leave it, forget it. Together Forever, is from Dominaria, not Dominaria, Battleborn. It's a good way to stop losing creatures to the graveyard. So if it had a counter on it, we can pay 1, and when it dies, back to our hand. Help avoid command attacks, and if we need to keep key pieces. Retribution of the Ancients is a better removal spell than you'd think in this deck. The amount of counters we've just got sitting on the board, we can keep weenies out of the field really easy. If we have to, we can pull a lot off to remove a commander. As Foretold is like an investment in the deck. The longer you leave it, eventually it'll get really big, and you can just start playing cards for free each turn. Solidarity of the Heroes, let's just double up the counters on a creature. With Strife, so we can keep targeting multiple and copy it. A few board wipes. The deck could run like Divine Reckoning, Divine Reckoning is a good way to selectively keep our commander and get rid of everything else. Opponent gets to keep theirs probably as well. Austria Command, same idea. We need to be picky what we're removing. Black Sun just supports the counter plan, it's negative counters. Doom Blast again, just keep Atraxa, get rid of everything else. You can just run Wrath of God, but I like board wipes that give us options to save our commander or be a bit more selective. This isn't the Planeswalker variant of the deck. There are plenty of Planeswalkers that could work in it. Tamio is probably my favourite, because if you have a Doubling Season out, she enters with double counters on them, and then you just alter, you get Omniscience and to draw 3 cards. That's game winning right there. Ajani, putting 3 counters among our creatures is very strong. His neg 8 does win the game. Nissa, she's great in the early game, creating us tokens and can put counters on all our creatures. She's just great, supports what we want to do. And my favourite card in the deck, Increasing Savagery. I know it's like a jank rare, 50 cents, it's nothing special, but this card alone breaks so many other cards in the deck. Dump it on Sage of Hours, have an extra turn. On your next turn, flashback it on Sage of Hours, then have another 2 turns. So between that one card and Sage of Hours, you've just had 3 extra turns for not much effort. Maybe more, because you might have a doubling season. Michaeloth, put it on there, and then flashback it again. Your Michaeloth is putting up 15 plus saplings on your upkeep. Gaia Sage, I love casting it onto Gaia Sage, then tapping Gaia Sage to flashback it again, and put another 10 on her. So then she's tapping for 15 plus mana. The Simic Manipulator, it gives you the ability to steal 15 power worth of or CMC worth of creatures. Fathom Mage, draw 15 cards. I love this card in this deck. Even if you didn't hit any of these 5 cards, putting 15 counters on creatures on your board, why not? Now the lands. These 4 lands at least support the deck in the counter mana. Gavany Township, blanket a counter on each creature. Oran Reef, similar, but it has to be a green creature that enter battlefield this turn, which isn't too hard. Llanowar, you hold that counter on that for that grafting mechanic till you get like something out that you need a counter on. Opal Palace is a good way to keep counters on Atraxa, because she got good combat stats, use them. So she can get herself pretty big too. For your actual coloured land base, it's not good. You are 4 colours, it's going to be expensive if you want it to work really well and be efficient. Your Vivid lands from Lorwyn are a good start. They've been reprinted a lot. They can pull off a charge counter to produce any mana, but in the deck we can sustain those charge counters, so they all become like any color tap lands, which is fine. Your Tri lands are good, but a little bit slow. Your Storage lands are a good way to go. You can really build up the counters on one of them and rip them off for 10 mana a turn. Late game anyway. Your BFC lands are your more budget friendly fetchables, but for the deck to work really well, fetch lands and shock lands are really up there. You don't have to, but it does help the deck a lot. Hence why Atraxa is a bit of an expensive deck to build. And like always, I'm not going to go through every single card in the deck. As you can see behind me, there's plenty of cards that would work. All your removal, your 4 color, you're everything but red. You have the best removal and the best tutors in the game. Use them, and I definitely feel like the deck is Abzan, splashing blue more than anything. Well, this variant of the deck. But Atraxa is one of the best commanders for a reason. She's very strong, very competitive, definitely like god tier commander up there. And she's just fun to play with. Just make sure you have your big bag of dice with you. So, let me know guys. Or even send me your Atraxa links, because I'm sure a lot of people watching have Atraxa decks here. So, tell me how you build your deck and show me. Alright guys, have a good one. Thanks for watching guys. Please remember to like and sub, and have a good one.